Hello, welcome to a special edition of the Theology Pugcast. We have another preview of the conference that we're sponsoring here in Battleground, Washington, entitled Welcome to Negative World. And we have the notorious James Wood with us. He's going to be one of the speakers at the conference, joined by, Aaron Wren and Joe Rigney. And it's great to see you, James. I know that you're there in Canada and in the middle of sort of like a big move, but thanks for taking time to talk to me.
Yeah, happy to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah. So James and I have known each other for a little while, and James, of course, wrote something for First Things that created a stir. But we're actually going to be talking about something that Aaron Wren developed, kind of some categories for thinking about the world in which we live. And negative world is one of the things that Aaron is known for. But James, you have some reflections and some things that you're going to address kind of that tie into that, but kind of go beyond it. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about while you're with us?
Yeah, so I, in my First Things piece, which launched me onto some sort of scene, I did use Wren's little heuristic, kind of break down the last, I guess he would say from 64, so the last 60 years of American culture and its relationship particularly to evangelicalism. And there's a lot of debate around that, and he'll probably discuss more of how his thought is further refined in light of that debate. But I particularly found it helpful to provide some kind of concrete terms to help people kind of understand some more rapid shifts that seem to have occurred in at least the last decade. And so, most of the debate is centered on the first two categories that he has: positive and negative, or positive and neutral world. Very few actually debate the negative world that we live in. That we live in something that is captured by that label. Even people like Tim Keller and David French, who are kind of most critical of the entire framework, very concede that at least that fact that we are in something that's different, and where the broader culture seems to be hostile. Not the focus is not necessarily on hostile to Christian persons, even though that might be included in that, but more Christian moral ideals for the political order. And there seems to be something that has accelerated in recent years. And so I used that to discuss what that might mean for ministry and political engagement. And I just kind of gestured very obliquely in that first piece. But I used two terms that I think that this moment requires us to revisit. The two terms being winsomeness as kind of an overall framework for cultural engagement, and also third wayism. And so in this conference, I'm going to be focusing more so on winsomeness and the limitations of making that approach your kind of dominant way of approaching politics and ministry. So I'm going to be focusing on two talks, one more on the limits of winsomeness as it pertains to politics, and the other one on the limits for ministry.
Well, that sounds great. I'm really looking forward to it. What are the titles of the talks again, just so we can remind people of what they are?
Yeah, they're a little provocative and kind of fun, and also they have helped me frame my thoughts. So the first one on politics is Neighbors, Enemies, and Demons. And then I'll share the title for the second one, and maybe I'll kind of go into something about each. And then the second one is Sheep, Wolves, and Fools. And one of my kind of overarching theses is that if you approach politics and ministry primarily according to the winsome frame, which is overly concerned about how you're perceived by the broader culture. And one of the ways I've summarized the winsome approach is that you are trying to minimize offense so as to maximize reception to the gospel message. And there's a lot of good in that, and I still affirm a lot of that, but it can be debilitating in a lot of ways and lead to clouded judgment. And in my piece, when it comes to politics, I think that the argument that I've centered on, which then will play into this first talk, is that I do think the people that appropriate these terms in this approach, they approach cultural engagement and politics through the lens of evangelism and in an apologetic mode. And I say that that's wrong for all sorts of reasons, and I've already talked about that elsewhere. But for here, this talk, I'm going to be saying the things that the winsome people want to hold on to that I also want to hold on to are things like we need to love our neighbors and our enemies. Absolutely. No context changes that. The question I have is, well, what does that mean? And how does winsomeness actually cloud some of our judgment? Yes, we need to love our neighbors. Does loving your neighbor include protecting them from enemies? That's a question. Yes, we need to love our enemies. Does loving our enemies mean letting them get everything that they want in the social and political order? One of the phrases I want to key in on is you can't claim to love your neighbor while remaining indifferent to those things that destroy them. And so love of neighbor, I would say, includes things like hating and seeking to curb the impact of evil, both on themselves and on others. And the first point is that that's an expression of loving your enemy, to actually hold back the impact of evil on themselves and try to curb that. But also the second part is how you love your other neighbors by curbing the evil influence of enemies. So I think the winsome framework, one of the problems even just there from the get-go is it becomes very hard. They become extremely reluctant to even admit the fact that we have enemies. And so I want to be expanding on that and how that holds us back politically and culturally. But then the demons, that would be the part that people have seemed to gravitate on in some of my earlier pieces and public statements. And I'm still teasing that out. But one of my critiques of the winsome third way model is that it often remains in the realm of ideas too much and cannot admit sufficiently the spiritual and demonic realms and the existence of evil forces in our social political realms. And then what do we do with those? And so I want to develop what I think needs to be done with that. And I want to hold back on that and just give you a teaser.
Yeah, that's great stuff, James. Thank you. I think that's exactly what I'm looking for, is something that will encourage people to come and attend attend the conference. So it's going to be on September 9th and 10th here in Southern Washington. We're right outside of Portland, believe it or not. We're on the normal side of the river. So you got the Columbia River that divides Washington from Oregon. And so we'd encourage you to check out the link that you'll see in the show notes here. It'll take you to the conference website, and you can register. Click on a link there to the registration page and register. And you'll also find some information about lodging if you're coming from out of state, and so forth. So we'd really love to have you join us. It's going to be a great time. And as I noted, James will be joined by Aaron Wren and Joe Rigney, and it's going to be an event that I think will make a difference. I'm pretty confident about that. But anyway, thanks, James.
One thing I would add to that about Aaron and Joe and what I'm going to be trying to offer is I've already noticed in both of those other guys, some of their recent public statements is we're all aiming in this conference to really tease out some of the constructive proposals we want to make. I think all of us are trying not just to be critical in just a critical mode, but actually saying, well, okay, what are we offering? And I know a lot of people have been asking, okay, so what's your alternative proposals? And I just want to say, I think we're all three of us are really trying to offer that in this conference. So I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Well, thanks, James, for taking some time out of your busy schedule here in all the transition that you're engaged in. And thank you, folks in Pugcast land, for spending some time with us and listening in to this quick interview of James Wood. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.